You know what I don't like about modern gaming? The endless updates, the microtransactions, and the fact that you can't just pop a game in and play it anymore. I mean, Sony is even taking away physical media as an option for the upcoming PlayStation 6. Ugh. Everything today runs as a service. Everything demands your attention for hours on end. And somewhere along the way, I started missing the simplicity of the 90s. That's what led me back to the Atari Jaguar. Yes, the Atari Jaguar. The one that everyone said is terrible. I know what you're thinking. Why go back to a console that failed so hard? In this video, I'm going to argue in support of the wonderful and sometimes strange world of the Atari Jaguar, looking at what makes it special amongst other great retro gaming consoles of the time. And to do this, we'll look at the top 3 reasons why it's worth getting into today. We'll start by looking at a handful of its original great games. Next, we'll explore its second life with retro gaming aficionados, and we'll even take a peek under the hood of the system's hardware. And if you watch until the end, I'll highlight a port of a classic fighting game being released for this console that really does have 9 lives. So, let's get right into it. Of course we have to start with what it's all about, which, for the Jaguar, is a small but interesting library of games. To really understand what makes the Jaguar roar, you have to actually play some of its best games, which include Alien vs. Predators, the game that sold Jaguars, and if you played it, you know exactly why. This is a first-person shooter that puts you in the boots of the Marine, the Predator, or the Alien, and each campaign feels completely different. As the Marine, it's a survival horror experience. You have a motion tracker that beeps faster as enemies approach and your ammo is scarce. You have to manage your resources carefully, and the tension is palpable. The Predator campaign is a power fantasy. You can use cloak mode and thermal vision to stalk your enemies, and you have a shoulder cannon that can one-shot most foes. And the Alien campaign is a speedrun. You move at a blistering pace while shredding enemies and then cocooning them to create new respawn points as you progress. The mechanics are fun, the feel is tense throughout, and the level design is sprawling. This one looks great, and is still a thrill to play. Tempest 2000. Now, this is the game that made me a believer. Tempest 2000 is an arcade shooter that takes a classic and cranks everything up to 11. The core loop is simple. You're on a geometric web and you shoot enemies as they come down the lane towards you. But the game throws so much at you so quickly that it becomes a test of pure reflex. The power-ups are fantastic. There's an AI droid that follows you and shoots. There's a jump that lets you leap off the web, and the super zapper that clears the screen when you're overwhelmed. The soundtrack is pumping. The colors are neon bright and the frame rate is smooth. This is a game that rewards practice and reflexes. It's pure, unadulterated arcade bliss, and it's one of the best versions of Tempest ever made. Now, the Jaguar port of Doom is a technical marvel. This is the first console version of the game that actually felt like the real Doom. It runs at a solid frame rate. The levels are faithfully recreated and the controls are surprisingly tight once you get used to them. The game uses the full color palette of the Jaguar, so the environments are rich and detailed. The lighting effects are impressive, with flickering lights and dark corridors that create an atmospheric experience. You have the full arsenal of weapons, from the pistol to the BFG, and while it's missing the atmospheric music of the PC version, which is a shame, the sound effects are intense and satisfying. This was the first time console gamers could truly experience the magic of Doom in their living rooms, and it's still a blast. Rayman on the Jaguar is a visual masterpiece. This is the game that introduced the world to the limbless hero, and it looks absolutely stunning. The colors are vibrant, the animation's so fluid, and the level design is imaginative. The gameplay is a tough-as-nails platformer. You punch with your extended fist, you glide across maps, and you run through lush, colorful worlds. The difficulty gets pretty hardcore in the late game, but it's still fair. Every death teaches you something, and when you finally clear a level, the satisfaction is immense. The music is catchy, the boss fights are epic, and the sense of discovery in this world is fun. If you grew up with Rayman on the Jaguar, you know exactly how special this version is. The final game I'd like to highlight here is Iron Soldier, which is a mech game that was built specifically for the Jaguar. You pilot a massive walking mech, and your goal is to destroy enemy bases and vehicles across a fully 3D battlefield. The controls have a satisfying weight to them, and you can rotate your torso independently from your legs, which allows for some strategic positioning. The weapons are diverse. You have the standard cannon, a railgun, and even a powerful cruise missile that you can steer around the map. The levels are open and destructible, meaning that you can blow up buildings and bridges to create a pathway of destruction across the field of play. The enemy AI is aggressive. They'll flank you if you're not careful. I remember thinking when this game first came out, it felt really ahead of its time, and it's still one of the best mech games on any early 90s console. The sense of scale is incredible, and the explosions are huge. And while the Jaguar has some other really fun titles like Wolfenstein 3D, Super Burnout, and Missile Command 3D, the ones we've just covered stand out to me as the very top of the pack, and were able to compete head-to-head with the best games on other consoles at the time. Real quick, if you enjoy this content, I've put a link in the description below of a playlist of all of my other Jaguar videos that you might also enjoy, so check it out and stick around for a while. Before we take a look at the passionate Jaguar community today, quick personal story. After I had to sell my Jaguar to pay for some college textbooks decades ago, I thought, well, that's it. And as years went by, I was amazed to see how the Jaguar fanbase was still going strong. To me, it says a lot about the console that so many people still like it, and have found a variety of really cool ways to share their love for this retro console nowadays. So first is JagFest. This event started way back in the 90s, but was most recently hosted by Songbird Productions in 2024. That same year, there was also an eJagFest held in Europe. In 2026, Songbird is bringing back JagFest to Rochester, Minnesota on August 21st to 22nd, offering retro gaming fans a weekend of Atari Jaguar, Lynx, and Nuon action, featuring free-play games on the original hardware, high-score tournaments, and exclusive game demos. What's neat about this event is that it also has in-depth Q&A sessions with Atari Jaguar game developers for the die-hard fans who want to learn more about new games being released on the system. With in-person attendance limited to 100 people, fans who aren't able to attend in person can still purchase a virtual supporter ticket to access private Discord channels, live streams, and recordings, with both ticket types providing early access to exclusive merchandise. Check this one out. I've left a link in the comments if you want to join in the festivities. Now, another way I got back into the Jaguar was when I stumbled across Big Pimu, which is the definitive Atari Jaguar emulator for retro gaming fans. It's celebrated as the first software to achieve 100% compatibility across the entire retail library. This free program easily emulates every single Jaguar cartridge and Jaguar CD game at full speed without demanding high-end PC hardware. What I like most is how it strips away the historic frustration of simulating a complex, multi-processor architecture of the original console, which we'll touch on more a bit later. It lets fans dive straight into notoriously difficult to emulate classics like Alien vs. Predator and Tempest 2000. What makes Big Pimu incredibly easy to use is its hassle-free plug-and-play setup that requires no traditional installer. Users simply extract a zip file and run the executable. It features an intuitive menu interface with built-in controller bindings, native save state support, and an auto-update feature that minimizes configuration headaches. While it functions perfectly in its default mode, retro enthusiasts can easily toggle modern performance enhancements, such as upscaling visuals to 4K resolution and forcing sluggish games to run at a silky smooth 60 frames per second. And a final aspect of the Jaguar community that I've got to mention are the dedicated online hubs that keep it going strong. Platforms like the Atari Age forums and standalone fan sites like AtariJaguar.co.uk's Do the Math site allows enthusiasts to debunk myths about the system, trade hardware, review games, and catalog the unreleased prototypes. Because Hasbro, who previously owned the rights to the Jaguar, declared it an open platform in 1999, developers now face zero licensing hurdles when releasing new games on the system. This ecosystem directly drives an incredible wave of brand new physical release games for the classic 1993 hardware. This is one reason why the Homebrew pipeline remains highly active, with a number of major projects in the works. Fans tracking these on community threads can also follow high-profile arcade conversions like the highly anticipated port of Mortal Kombat, but more on that later. And before we dive into the final bit about the Jaguar's awesome hardware, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is always here for a quick retro gaming break whenever you need it. I appreciate your support since it's the only way YouTube will highlight my videos. So as we've seen, the system has some great games, but that leads to the natural question about the hardware itself. I mean, what's really under the hood? The Jaguar's true capabilities might have been a mixed bag, but when the developers got it right, it was genuinely impressive. The system could push a lot of colors on screen, and it had a unique ability to handle both 2D and 3D graphics, which was rare for the time. The Atari Jaguar hit the market in late 1993 with a highly unconventional 5-processor architecture multi-chip layout. And at its core, the console featured a standard 16-bit Motorola 68000 master controller operating alongside a proprietary 32-bit graphics processor unit named Tom and a 32-bit audio processor called Jerry. What allowed Atari to controversially market the console as the world's first 64-bit gaming system was a 64-bit wide system data bus that tied these components together, along with Tom's specialized 64-bit object processor and blitter. Now, this massive data highway gave the system a theoretical processing advantage, allowing it to move large amounts of visual data simultaneously, while competing consoles like the Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo were still restricted to narrow 16-bit paths. What made the hardware advanced for its time was its specialized capability for scaling sprites on the fly and rendering shaded 3D polygons and even processing some basic texture mapping. The console features a unique, software-driven architecture instead of relying on fixed hardware function chips, meaning the two custom RISC processors within Tom and Jerry could be entirely reprogrammed to compute whatever graphics or audio tasks a developer needed. Coupled with a 64-bit blitter capable of performing incredibly fast block data transfers, the Jaguar could draw fluid 3D environments, display thousands of on-screen colors simultaneously, and output CD-quality 16-bit sound. These traits initially gave it an edge over the other consoles at the time, before the arrival of dedicated 3D powerhouses like the Sony PlayStation. Now, before we go, I've just got to talk about one of the new games in the works for this system that I'm really excited about that highlights the passion of the Homebrew community. We're talking about the much anticipated Mortal Kombat port for the Atari Jaguar that's nearing its final release after several years of solo development by Chris of True Fun Games.
Hey guys, I'm Chris from True Fun Entertainment, and if this is the first time you're watching my videos, welcome. I am currently porting Mortal Kombat to the Atari Jaguar, and today Beta V2 is officially launched.
Currently in its Beta V2 testing phase, the game is fully content complete, featuring 60 frames per second performance, all of the original fighters, the traditional arcade ladder, endurance matches, and bosses like Goro and Shang Tsung. It also includes some Jaguar fan service, such as making the character Kasumi from the infamous Jaguar fighting game Kasumi Ninja a hidden playable character. While the developers heavily focused on polishing, bug fixing, and finalizing a completely free open source ROM release, as of now, the final release date has not yet been locked in. However, the project is advanced enough that the developer already announced a 2028 release for its follow-up, Mortal Kombat 2. I can't wait to play both of these again, this time on the Jag. So to wrap things up, if you've never actually played the Jaguar, don't just sit in your mom's basement talking smack about it. Now is the time to give it a go. I mean, just take a few minutes and start out on the emulator. Fire up Doom or Tempest 2000 and see for yourself why people are still obsessed with this roaring beast of a console. It blazed a trail all of its own, and even though Atari stumbled with it back in the day, it was never boring. And in the final analysis, the Atari Jaguar might not be a console I can recommend to everyone, but for the right person, the one who loves the weird, the janky, and the ambitious, it'll always be a treasure and tons of fun. Alright my friends, this is the Retro Gaming Boss signing out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.